Today I ran into an interesting problem. So I recently bought a brand new Mac Studio and I'm doing a lot more AI coding, so I have a lot of sessions open at the same time. And what I realized was that even with my brand new Mac Studio with 128 gig of RAM, that I was still experiencing memory pressure issues. And I thought that was a little bit odd considering that I was running on a 48 gigabit laptop previously and it was doing okay, but I was still having memory pressure issues there. So okay, I get this brand new Mac Studio, I upgrade, I'm thinking this should solve my problem. And here I am not even 3 days later with memory pressure issues. So of course I cranked out Claude and I said, hey, install all the tools you need to figure out why I'm having memory pressure issues. And it turns out that it was Claude inappropriately using the gopls LSP. Now, if you don't know what gopls is, let's look that up real quick, kind of give you an idea. And basically, it's the language server for Go. And what Claude has done recently is they have enabled a bunch of the LSPs, which allow the Claude Code itself to very quickly and accurately parse through that code, right? So there's one for a lot of different languages, and gopls is the one that we use for Go. I'm primarily a Go developer. I've been doing that for 14 years now, and I really enjoy Go. And so when this got installed, I saw a noticeable difference in how well Claude started doing as far as navigating the Go code, identifying Go code issues. It was great, and I really liked it. But what I found out today is that it launches a gopls instance or server for every single Claude session that it creates. Now, I'm working on 5 to 10 projects at a time, all Go. Within those, I might have another 5 to 10 Claude instances actually running at that point. So we start to do the math, and I kind of outlined it in my issue here a little bit, is a gopls instance is going to use between 500 to 800 megabytes of RAM. That's quite a bit. And then if I've got 10 sessions, or 40 sessions, which is actually pretty normal for me. In fact, that's what it was diagnosing. I had 40 sessions of Claude open. I was all working in Go projects. Now, I'm not always working in them exactly at the same time, but I use TMUX, and I leave them open, and I come back to them throughout the day, throughout the week. And so they're already there, and they're in session, and that memory is being consumed. The problem is that they're literally running it as gopls serve, and they're connecting one by one. However, they released a Daemon mode somewhat recently with gopls that basically allows one instance to come up, and then all Claude could use them. Now, I tried to fuddle around locally and make this work through my own configuration, but when I disabled the one that comes from Claude built in, and then I tried to enable my own, it just did not work. So what am I left with? I really need to use it. It's important to me, but I can't have it taking up 20 to 30 gig of my RAM of the 128 gigs. So I've got other stuff going on too, right? I want as much RAM free as I can at that point. And considering that I don't run an IDE, I actually do everything at the CLI. So I use Ghosty and I use TMUX. And so I'm really low memory pressure that way. And to have gopls eat up that much of it simply isn't acceptable. So what are my options? My options are to file an issue, which I did, right? But we all know that this is not going to be a priority for them, and nobody's going to pick this up. However, I've got Claude, and I don't have any idea how Claude Code is written, but I do have a handy-dandy skill that I wrote a while ago. I used it in my previous video. I'm going to use it again here, called Start Issue. And what this does, oops, I need to actually give it the issue number. And the issue number for what I filed. All right, so I've kicked off the start issue workflow. I gave it the issue 19517. And the first thing it's going to do is use this skill to do some interrogation and understand what is up with this issue. This skill is actually pretty smart. It will actually go through the Anthropic's Claude Code repo. It will try to figure out if there's an existing issue, which I know there isn't already. I already searched. And then it's going to figure out that this is a problem. Maybe a cross between a bug and a feature, really. It's a bug that, in the sense, it's using all that memory, but really this is a feature saying I'm going to use a new way of doing the gopls. So I'm curious to see how that comes out. These skills are for free. I give them away. They are on my repo for Gopher Guides. And so if I go to github.com, Gopher Guides, Gopher AI, we will see that I've got a bunch of plugins and skills out here that I use in my daily work efforts. So you might be asking yourself, what on earth is Gopher Guides? It's actually a training company I started many years ago, and Gopher Guides is a Go training company. So if you're looking for Go training, shameless plug, that's what I do. I also do Go consulting, and I work on a lot of open source Go projects as well. So anyway, I'll put that in the show notes here. And you can always go ahead and click out there and install these yourself. All right, so I've got it started. First thing it's going to ask me is, do I want to create a work tree? some of you might not know what a work tree is, and basically that's a way of copying the entire repo to its own subdirectory and creating a branch there, and Git tracks that. It takes care of the tracking for that, just like a branch, but it's isolated. And what's so nice about that, if I have to work on a bunch of issues that are completely unrelated in a repo, I can create work trees for each one of them and have all of my AI sessions working independently and at the same time without running over each other, and that's a big deal. In this case, however, I don't do a lot of work on this repo, and I'm just going to keep it simple. So I'm going to say, you know what, work in the current directory. So it's going to stay in the same directory, and it's going to go ahead and just create a branch from here. Work trees are what I traditionally do in my projects that I work very heavily in. Most projects that I'm working on any given day, I've got at least 5 different work trees at the same time, because I'm not going to just sit here and watch Claude do its work. That's a waste of my time. The whole point of having Claude is that I can have it work on a bunch of things at the same time. I have the max plan, and I get pretty close to maxing out the max plan on a daily basis because of my workflow like this. Again, using TMUX and Claude Code and work trees allows me to switch very quickly between all of my projects and very quickly keep a lot of these things up in the air. It reminds me of the old circus act where they used to have all the plates and they were trying to spin them at the same time. And so my goal is to keep at least 10 to 20 plates spinning all day long with Claude Code. And that might seem crazy, but it works out very, very well. I also use the Ralph Wiggum plugin, and I also have most of my skills have the Ralph Wiggum built into it as well, so that when I start this, in fact, what you're seeing here is that it's going to actually use the start issue with the Ralph Wiggum in play. So it's going to do quite a bit of research here. Now, what's really interesting about this is I have no idea what it's going to come up with. I have no idea how to actually fix this in Claude Code because I don't really understand anything about their code base. I've never looked at their code base before. If we look at the languages here, we see that it is basically shell. So that's kind of interesting to see what it's going to do here. And I'm guessing that what it's going to try to do, it's going to try to go ahead and create a new configuration for the shell when it creates these. I'm hoping that's what it does. It might point me somewhere else too. I don't know. Maybe they use the plugin somewhere. We'll see what they do there. It might literally be just the plugin that it's going to modify. So we'll take a look. All right, so it did a lot of research, and it was interesting what it found out. So one of the things it found out is that actually this is going to be more of a plugin issue. So the issue is probably in the wrong repo to start with, so that's why I created it. So I'm probably going to move that issue over to the Claude Plugins official. And it actually looks like they only accept them from the Anthropic team for the original, but I'm guessing this is an external plugin that hopefully is maybe being maintained by the Go team. I'm not sure. Either way, I'm going to go ahead and log the issue over there or search for the issue and see what I can find out. So the first thing I'm going to do is this here. So I'm just going to tell it, I'm going to stop the planning at this point, and I'm going to tell it a few things here. Go ahead and search the Claude Plugins official repo to see if there's already an issue for this. Also, let's find out if this is something that the Go team manages for the Go Please repo or plugin, or if this is something that we have to go ahead and try to add an issue or fix ourselves, considering the Anthropic team only allows their team to make these fixes. All right, let's see what we can find out from there. So I'm really curious to find out, is this something we can actually fix now, or can we only log an issue? So the first thing it's going to do is read through the issues. I'm just going to go to the issues real quick as well and just search for Go Please, see if there's anything out there. And there is not. All right, so pretty unlikely that anybody's paying attention to this. It also appears that the Daemon is really new, and even locally, it doesn't look like I've got the latest Go Please installed. So this might even require people to upgrade to their Go Please, which might not be great either. So I'm going to have a couple options here. I'm guessing one is I'm going to try to get them to fix this. I'm going to try to fix it myself if I can. And if not, those all fail, I might actually just fork it at this point and use my own instead. So let's see, what did it find? So no existing issues. Issues are enabled on that repo, so we can file it. Internal plugins, including the Go Please, are developed and maintained by Anthropic. Okay, so that is theirs. External pairs are auto-closed, but issues can be filed by anyone. All right, so I think we're just going to go ahead and file the issue at this point. I think that's the best we're going to be able to do. I think it's also important that we keep in that issue what the minimum version of Go Please is, and to ensure that part of these plugins call that out or try to auto-install that or get the user to install it, whatever the protocol is for that. I really don't know how they're handling that, to be honest. All right, so let's just tell it that real quick. I want to look at their plan. All right, so the plan is there's no existing issue, and we can recommend that issue. We'll file that, or create an issue, close the other one, I would imagine. All right, let's tell it a little bit more here. We want to close our old issue on the original Claude Code as part of this plan. We also want to mention that it looks like there's maybe a minimum version of gopls that has to be installed for this to work. So let's make sure that the Daemon is supported in whatever version that we're recommending. And is there any way that we can also test this locally, maybe by either forking this or just making the changes locally within our own Claude files to prove to them that this actually works before actually filing the issue? Again, these are just all things that I want to make sure I don't waste anybody's time. I do a lot of open source development, and there's nothing more a little frustrating than when people submit these issues and they say, hey, go ahead and do this thing, and you just take it on face value and you look into the issue and you start to write the code, and then you find out what they're saying is completely incorrect technically, meaning that maybe it doesn't support that or the version doesn't support that, vice versa. So I want to make sure that before I make any recommendations to Anthropic, that I've done my research, that I know this actually does work as expected, and that we can actually try this locally as well. So that's part of what we're going to do here before we even file the issue. All right, so it looks like I do support Daemon mode locally. We'll see if that's true or not. I find that Claude likes to hallucinate when it comes to some of these things, and so we'll see how close we get with this. But again, we're going to test it all just to make sure. All right, let's read the plan here and find out what we came up with. All right, so the issue that we want to create is to add the remote auto with the Daemon support. That's true. Gopls is maintained by them. We know that. We can file the issue. First, we want to test it locally to prove it. So we're going to disable the official plugin. We're going to swap out our plugin. That's going to be the first part there that we do. And then from there, I'm going to kill any existing gopls processes, which is fine because I want to make sure I don't have any extra memory. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually start up Claude and try to do something that would require that gopls LSP to be enabled and see if it works. All right, let's give that a go. So I think that gopls Daemon actually might have been me messing around earlier this morning. I don't think that is actually part of the config that comes out of the box, so I'll probably have to clarify that. All right, well, it says I've tested with this locally, which is untrue because it certainly didn't test that yet. So I'm not super happy that it did that. This is part of Claude just deciding to do its own thing sometimes. But we will test it and then we will verify it. All right, so I don't think it really tested this. Let's find out. So we're going to go ahead and just go to one of my other projects that I know is using that, and that's this project right here. Just something simple here at this point to bring the gopls hopefully into effect. All right, so it's just going to search for the code there. No big deal. Okay, I have a new session running, searching through Go code. Did gopls load and is it in Daemon mode? Let's find out. And sometimes this is hard because sometimes it's going to go ahead and just brute force through some of this as well without using the gopls plugin. You can't guarantee it, but we have no idea. So that was started before, so that was probably something else using it. So and again, it's just reading the code right now, so it might not actually be trying to make any changes. And because of that, gopls might have not actually been kicked in. And so that's one of the tricky parts, is trying to get it to kick that in. So we might have to just work for a while today on this on my different project and see if it actually starts working or not. All right, so far not having great success on this one at all, which is the case with development. So we're going to remove some of the stuff that we had in there. Let's remove it. Let's remove ours. So quits creating confusion. This issue. This is one of those things where when I work with Claude, it's always interesting to see how it just makes epically the wrong decision. Any senior developer would just get rid of that, like just delete it. And it's like, hey, let's just keep this around. It's like, no, absolutely not. This is not something that we want to keep around. This was a test and this is confusing and it's not supposed to be in the actual authoritative repo. We just kind of messed it up locally because we were trying to do some different testing. And so we need to get rid of that all so that we don't get it confused in the future and see if that might have actually been causing the problem to begin with. All right, so now we have only the actual official ones plugged in at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and restart some other sessions I have on this computer. I'm going to run it for a while. I'm going to come back, see if we can make any progress here. But so far, not so great. I do have the issue filed, but I really want to try to make this work. And so far, it's just not working at all based on what I've changed. All right, so I found another issue that I was going to work on today anyway. So let's go ahead and kick this off. This was a race condition that we actually found. I don't even think it's in the repo that we're working in. But really, I'm not interested in actually fixing the issue right now. I actually want to see if I can just get the go please to kick in at this point. So let's go with issue 1014 and let's kick that off. And then we'll come back and see if that kicked in go please at all. Hopefully it does. All right, so I kicked off another project. It looks like go please is running. So I have another session and that definitely worked it. So that's good. All right, so the question now is why doesn't it work in the mode that we're trying to get it work in? Okay, so why can't we change our local config force to in Daemon mode? It appears there must be some magic in the plugin because I don't see run as go please server, which is what I'd expect. Just has this simple command, which makes think it's always remain as a one-off, and that's creates memory pressure. No idea. Let's find out if maybe that's it. Search the internet. See if we can't figure out what the right commands are. Validate that those commands work on my local machine. And figure out if we should put Claude in some type of debug mode to see why that speed does or does code like we want. Alright, let's put Claude to work and try to figure out a little bit more about what we're trying to do here. Again, you're going to see that really I'm just using Claude the same way that I would be using Claude. These are things that if I was working on this issue for that repo, I would have to go and do all this research myself. And all I'm doing at this point is telling Claude, here's the things I think are going wrong based on my experience as a 30-year veteran of software development. And I'm going to have it go and do all the research to try to figure out what I would manually have to do. This is where AI really shines. And this is where I think people still get it wrong, where they're thinking AI is just about writing code and AI is about taking my job as a code writer. I will say it writes way more of my syntax than I used to, but at the end of the day, I'm still in charge. I'm the developer. I'm creating the architecture, the vision, the direction. I'm auditing the code. I'm just not doing the keystrokes that I used to do anymore. So if you think you're going to take my place as a 30-year veteran, I think you'll find that if I give a non-30-year veteran Claude Code and you give me Claude Code, the differences will be vastly varying when we're done. I can assure you that my code will be better and more robust, and not because AI is smarter when I use it, because I'm giving AI smarter instructions, which makes a big difference. Also, as you can see, it's much better at testing all the possible scenarios than I would have to do manually. So again, this is all about speeding up to get to the answer faster. Oh, and I took my advice. It's looking at the debug information, so that's good. It's already finding there's a bunch of issues there. It might try to help us get to this answer a little bit faster. I love when Claude gets done and says with just complete confidence, I have the answer. And it's always interesting because sometimes it does have the answer. Sometimes the answer I think is completely wrong and it's actually right. But many, many times, as you might imagine, is completely wrong or just missing critical pieces of information. But the confidence at which it comes back is always amusing to me. All right, I'm actually going to commit that code here while I'm waiting for that, but I'm going to exit this and see where we're at. I really want to see what it came up with. All right, so let's find out what it figured out. So the plugin was loading. Okay. The local plugin format was partially correct. So go please defaults to serve mode. All right, that explains why we weren't seeing it, which is fine. Looks like a pretty good plan. Let's give it a try. So let's get down to here. Let's push this out of here just to get it out of there. I'm going to have to exit this anyway. I'm going to go ahead and tell this to kick that off, start working. And at this point, it's going to, again, rewrite locally the plugins from the official Claude plugin. We're just going to basically pretend that came from the official marketplace, even though it didn't, because I do control my own computer. And if we can get this to work, I think that's going to be the key piece of this, which is pretty important. It looks like it's just going to write its own plugin here, which is fine. I'm happy to use my own plugin to make sure it works and disable their plugin. That's perfectly okay. It feels like I did this earlier today and this did not work, but maybe we had the syntax wrong. And of course, it's nice to keep working on this other one. Got a free bonus PR today that I didn't expect because I wanted to try to test this out. All right, so we disabled the official one. We're going to enable my Daemon one, and we're going to see if we can't make this work properly. All right, so now we're going to exit out of there. And once this is done, we will go ahead and restart this and see if it picks up the gopls. If it picks it up, we know it's running in Daemon mode, which is super important at this point. All right, so we want to run that in Daemon mode. And so the first thing I do is I have an alias for it. If you ever see I'm always typing Claude D with an extra D, which means dangerous. If I just started with that's fine. And so I have an alias that I use all the time because I run in that mode all of the time. But it wants me to run it in debug mode. And I still want to have my dangerous list get permissions. Dash debug as well. Is it dash dash or just dash? What did it say? Dash dash debug. Okay. So there we go. We're started up in debug mode. There we go, debug mode enabled. I actually should make this my default because I'm constantly debugging what's going on with these things. And so that actually might be my new alias when I'm done here. Oh, that caught a really cool bug, by the way, the constant time compare. If you've ever seen that before, it's a cryptography thing where you want to make sure that when you do those types of comparisons, you always take the same amount of time so you don't inadvertently expose someone seeing when you're checking versus not checking. That's kind of an interesting thing I learned last year working on some crypto projects. All right, so it definitely didn't kick anything in. Now let's see if it gets kicked in by going to one of my other projects here. Let's go over to where I was working on Lightstream over here. And I was working on this. All right, so that was looking at the race condition. Yeah, we'll create a work tree here for this. This might actually kick it in. This is gonna hopefully look pretty deep into this issue. This is going to do a bunch of testing. Did it actually find the problem with this? I was looking at this earlier. I have an outdated modern C. That's interesting by quite a bit, really. I'm surprised there. 4 minor versions. May include the fix, who knows? All right, let's kick that in, let it go to work. See if it will actually maybe get lucky and start using gopls here. If the fix for this is simply upgrading the dependency, it's going to be kind of silly, but it'd be an easy fix. All right, let's gonna keep working there. Let's go back all the way down here. So when I said I had a lot of things running, I wasn't kidding, right? And I keep these running, and again, that's why it was so important. Just try to reduce this memory pressure to begin with. I told my friend when I started this video, it's be like a 5 or 10 minute video. It's about 48 minutes of actual recording time so far. But I promise I will take this down to 5 or 10 minutes and shorten this up if I can. Because of course that other session was not loaded fresh. All right, so at this point, I feel like maybe I'm just gonna have to let this run for a little while today and refresh my sessions and see if I can come back to this. We'll give it a go. I just want to verify this works. I just want to make sure that I'm not submitting a fix or a feature that's not actually going to work. So that's my biggest criteria at this point. All right, so after much investigation, we found out that we really can't add our own LSP here. We tried a couple different times, and the easy fix was simply to modify theirs. Now, this is going to get overwritten at some point if I update it, but at least for now, this seems to be working locally, and I'm not launching instance after instance of the gopls LSP. So I updated the issue out there. Hopefully, they will get to this soon, seeing as they know that it's a fairly simple change, and they can validate this. I was hoping to actually have the PR pushed up, but this is as close as we're going to get. So I appreciate you sticking with me. And again, this is just one of those things where you never know what you're going to be into when you start a live coding session. So again, if you like this, like and subscribe. I'm going to have a lot more of these coming up later.